my name is Angie. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel. This is a channel where I like to make videos about books, as well as videos about homeschooling, mostly book related. So today's video is the fourth in my series that I am running this week on my channel. And this series is called Spring Through the Genres. And my goal for this series is to share my book lists. So I've been compiling this list of books that I really want to read in my favorite genres, and I am sharing those with you. So I've covered contemporary, I've covered mystery, and I've covered science fiction already, and today's video is on nonfiction. And this is such a fun genre. It is a very broad genre. The things I'm interested in, the things you will see in this video, are things that are kind of science related. I like a lot of true crime. I like psychology. I like personality, all these things. So that's kind of the gamut of the books that I'm going to highlight that are on my list. And so let's just dive right in. So the first book on my list is the oldest book. It was published in 2005, and it's called The Great Influenza. The Deadliest Pandemic in History, I believe is what it's called, by John Barry. And so this book has been on my list since I think college. I've wanted to read this book. I've been excited to read this book. So this book is about the Spanish flu, the 1919 flu, and it goes through kind of the history of what happened. So John Barry believes that this strain of influenza first started on a farm in Kansas, a pig farm in Kansas, because influenza works through kind of three main species. So a big triangle of humans, pigs, and birds. Spanish flu was a swine flu. And so this was a very, very deadly strain of influenza that just rampaged the world. It happened during World War I, so a lot of soldiers died. I think more soldiers died due to Spanish flu than due to gunfire and things like that. And I've always been very interested in influenza. I almost went into a lab studying influenza during my graduate school years, but I didn't. I did something different, but I think it's just a very interesting virus. It's an RNA virus, it's segmented. It has a lot of tools and tricks that make it easy to mutate and things like that. So then oftentimes we'll get these big spikes in increased infections due to a new strain of the flu. And so I want to get to this book, and I know some people might not want to read something like this during this time frame. So the second book I have on my list is called Packing for Mars, A Curious Science of Life in the Void, I think is the subtitle, by Mary Roach. I have been wanting to read a Mary Roach for so long. There's so many. There's like Stiff, there's Gulp, there's so many that have been on my list, and I haven't read them. I have heard she is just super funny and really witty, and she takes huge deep dives into books. And this one just looks really fun. It talks about just kind of the interesting things that happens to the human body in space, and how can life occur in space with just all the human bodily functions, with all the things. She doesn't pull punches on just kind of the grossness factor is what I hear in this book. And so that just sounds kind of fun and interesting and lighthearted. So this is on my list to be my first Mary Roach to pick up. So I'm really excited to get to it. So the third book on my list is kind of a psychology self-help book, and it's called Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. And she's fantastic. If you have never heard of Brene Brown, you should Google her right away, because she has one of the top TED Talks. I think it's The Power of Vulnerability. Check it out. So good, so good. And this book kind of dives more into that idea of living a vulnerable life. So it's called Daring Greatly, and let me read the subtitle to you because it's long. It's called How the Courage to Be Vulnerable Transforms the Way We Live, Love, Parent, and Read. She's really deep dived into this idea of living a fuller life when you allow vulnerability into your life. You allow yourself to be imperfect. You allow yourself to share, and it causes your life to grow in a very positive way. I think this is just so powerful in our world today, the ability to just be really real with each other, and maybe even real with ourselves and our vulnerabilities, and how we don't have to keep this image of perfection, of that we have it all together like that. Instagram perfect, Pinterest perfect life. And she just really dives into that. And so I am really looking forward to reading this book. I think it will be very inspirational and uplifting. The fourth book on my list takes a shift away from that, and it goes into kind of more of a true crime book. I don't even know if I would call it true crime. It's more of like nonfiction, mountain accident sort of idea. This book is called Death Mountain by Donnie Eichar. It was published in 2013. It goes through an incident that happened to 9 climbers in the 50s. So they were attempting to climb on this mountain in Russia. So there was lots of bad weather. And why this is interesting, why this mountain accident was chronicled in a book, is there's some peculiar things about it. So what they have found, or this legend almost about this incident, was that these climbers were very experienced. So they knew their stuff, and they were found outside of their tents without their shoes, without their coats, like they had run with just sheer terror. And then their tents were destroyed, and they had these just like violent injuries. And some of them even showed like maybe potential radiation issues. And so something happened to these climbers, and nobody knows what. So the author of this book went through different journals and photographs and things like that, maybe police reports, to try and piece together what happened on this mountain, that nobody is quite clear how these men all died. That just sounds really interesting to me. Like, I just want to know. I want to know what happened. Like, I've done a fair amount of climbing. I used to climb more before my kids, but just to think about something bad seemed to have happened, and I am curious what. The fifth book on my list was actually recommended to me by my husband, and so we have a copy of it. And it's a self-help in the emotional health sort of arena. And so this is called Emotional Agility, Getting Unstuck, Embrace Change, and Thrive in Work and Life by Susan David. And I've read a couple chapters of it, and it is a really, really interesting book. It just talks about this idea of emotional agility. So it's the ability to take different situations and events in your life and tune into how they make you feel. But it's the knowledge of how they make you feel, but the ability to respond in the moment, the ability to take some control of your emotions and be like, wow, I'm snowballing here. I am believing things that are untrue. This kind of was a trigger for me, and I know that. And so I'm just more careful, and I'm more aware of my response so that I don't go where I used to. Emotional health is just good for everyone. So that's another nonfiction on my list. The sixth book on my list is called Lab Girl by Jahren. And I have seen this book around. I've seen a number of people recommend it. I think Emma over at Cup of Books, as well as Olive of Book Olive. I'll link both of those channels below because they both really like nonfiction, but I've seen them both read this book, and it looks just really good. I am particularly drawn to it because I have done doctoral research and I pursued my PhD, and so this world is familiar to me, so I just kind of want to relive it through this book. And so this book is kind of a biographical book of this woman as she shares her life starting in childhood, where she would go with her dad to his science lab. He worked at a university, he ran a lab, and he would let his children kind of play with the stuff in the lab, which as a mom, I'm like, that makes me a little nervous, but that's really cool because it just set up her love of science. And then I think the book goes kind of through her pursuit of the career, of then going to graduate school and how graduate school is, and just like, it's a world that is just so unique that not many people experience, and it's fun. I think it'll be very reminiscent for me, very nostalgic. She works in a completely different field than I did. She worked in plants, and she still works in plants. I believe it goes all the way till where she sets up as like a research scientist. Okay, the seventh book on my list is a personality book. I love personality stuff. So this is written by a woman named Bogel. She actually has two of her own podcasts, which you might have heard of. She's The Modern Miss Darcy is her podcast, and also I think What to Read Next. I'll put those below if I get that wrong, but both of those I listen to the podcast, and they're very entertaining. So she wrote a book, and her book is called Reading People: How Seeing the World Through the Lens of Personality Changes Everything. So it was published in 2017, so it's a newer book. But what she does is she takes kind of this interest in personalities and personality tests, and she puts it all in one book. So she talks a lot about like some of the most common ones, like Myers-Briggs, Strength Finders, Enneagram. And I love Enneagram probably the most. I'm an Enneagram 9, a peacemaker. And as for Myers-Briggs, I'm an ISFJ. So please put your numbers below, or your personality stuff below if you're interested in this stuff as well, because I could totally geek out on this. All right, the last book on my list of nonfictions is a dinosaur book. I like this topic. I like the topic of the dinosaurs. I'm actually in the process of putting together a dinosaur unit, or more of like a prehistory unit for my kids in the fall. And so I'm just kind of in the dinosaur mode right now. And so I have this book on my list, which has been recommended by Emma over at A Cup of Books. She goes nuts over this book, and so I'm just curious about it and I want to read it. It's called The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs: A New History of the Lost World. This book goes through kind of the different stages of the history of the dinosaurs, first what's believed about how they evolved, and second kind of goes through their peak when they were just really plentiful on the planet. So you're talking like the Cretaceous period and Jurassic period. And then it talks about like the big asteroid that hit the peninsula down in Mexico, which I've watched so many documentaries on that. That is just one of those things that I'm so very interested in. So I want to just learn a little bit more prior to teaching my kids all about dinosaurs. And so that is my last book in my nonfiction. And you can see that my nonfiction taste is a little specific. So I hope you found some books that you like. And please, based on these selections, comment below, give me some more suggestions, because I think the world of nonfiction is so fascinating. Sometimes it's hard for me to get into a nonfiction book because it takes a little bit more effort and a little bit more brain power, but I love them whenever I get into them. So I'm really looking forward to getting to all of these books. And thank you for taking the time to watch another one of my book recommendation videos. And please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel if you like what you see, and I will be back tomorrow for another video. My plan for tomorrow's genre is historical fiction, and I think that might be my favorite genre. I do have the most books on that list. So I will be sharing that tomorrow, so please tune back in, and I will catch you then. Okay, take care.